I don't like when it does that. Okay. All right. Okay, thank you guys for coming to our annual internship symposium. Yeah, my name is Anna, so thank you, I guess, again, for coming out tonight. We're gonna have 6 different speakers who had internships over the summer, 6 upperclassmen. So hopefully you get a lot out of this, kind of determine what kind of internship you're interested in, RU, learn about, I guess, the different internships, RUs, et cetera, available to med majors. So yeah, we're gonna get started with Peyton actually. She is virtual. So Peyton, you should be able to share your screen whenever. And then get started whenever also.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
Hi guys, sorry I couldn't be there. We had some last minute complications. So I'm gonna be telling you about my summer REU. So for anyone that doesn't know, an REU just stands for Research Experience for Undergrads. The one that I did was the Northeast Partnership for Atmospheric and Related Sciences, or what everybody else just calls the HWS REU, because this is a relatively new REU. The first year that they had it officially done was in 2018. I was initially selected for the summer between my freshman and my sophomore year, which was the COVID summer. So they actually ended up postponing it and saying, hey, you guys can reapply and you'll have first chance at being able to come the next time we have it in person, which was really awesome. I was really fortunate that they did that. But the way that since it's a partnership, there are 2 schools that are involved. One of them was Hobart and William Swift Colleges in Geneva, New York, and the other one was Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire, which is where we look at a lot of our upper air maps. So those 2 schools have 2 groups of students that work on research over the summer, and I was at HWS for over the summer. So a little bit about the REU itself. You do not need any research experience going in. They're more than willing to teach you everything that you'll need to know. It's targeted for undergraduate students, specifically first years and sophomores. So I know a lot of other REUs or internships want you to be a junior or a senior in college, but this one is actually targeted towards a little bit of the younger undergraduates. So that was one of the only ones that I saw my freshman year that was actually like that. So that was really nice that it was able to be a teaching moment. And you have to be working towards a degree in some sort of related field. There were a couple of like meteorology or atmospheric science majors, but there was also an economics major that I was there with. There was a civil engineer, there was a secondary education. There's a lot of fields that they are looking for. So if it's something that you're interested in, then you should just go for it, because you never know what's going to happen. And so the application, this is a little screenshot off of their website. It's pretty straightforward as far as applications go. You ask for your contact information, your academic information, unofficial transcript, your background information, like what school you're coming from, what your major is. You need 2 recommendations. And then the statement of interest is like the most notable part of the application, which is kind of shown here. You kind of select what your interests are and what you'd like to work with. There are 2 short essays. I think I might have done 3 for my second application. It's 250 words or less. It's not hard. And that can be found. I think Anna has a copy of these slides that she might be able to send out. The link is down here at the bottom. Their application has not yet opened for next summer, but I think they'll be opening it soon. And so the selection, the matching process. So once your application gets reviewed, it's based off of your academic record, your statement of interest, and your recommendations. They also have a really strong commitment to diversity. So they try to make sure that there's a very wide variety of people in the group in terms of where they're from, what school they're from, what their majors are, gender, sexuality, all of that. We had 10 girls and 2 boys over the summer. So there was a really strong female focus in the group that I was in. I'm not sure if the other group was like that because I wasn't there. But once you're selected and They know that they want you to be there. Based on your interests and your background, you're paired with a mentor. So at HWS, for me, it was Dr. Nick Metz and Dr. Neil Laird. And at Plymouth State, I think it was Dr. Jason Cordera and Dr. Eric Hoffman. Those were the primary mentors. And Neil and Jay were the ones that were the respective like captains of each school. So um, once you're paired with a mentor, they look at your interests and your background and like things like that, what you've taken, like your transcript, and decide on what project would be best for you. Because, like I said, there was one girl that was a secondary education major. She'd only had 1 year of college experience, and they gave her a project about wind chill and taught her how to use the software and stuff. And she was still able to do a really good study on like wind chill and things like that without any prior background knowledge. So they help make sure that you're not doing something that's too. And so there's a lot of benefits to doing this RU. So the benefits include paid housing within walking distance of the lab. I got to walk past the lake every single day. It was really nice. You got to use all the campus facilities. You did have to pay for your own food, but it was cheap. There was a Wegmans right down the street. Everyone went crazy over it. I don't know if anybody knows what Wegmans is. It's a grocery store. It's all the rage on the East Coast. I don't know why. But you get reimbursed travel to and from the RU. So if you drive, you get reimbursed for gas, food stops, anything like that. If you take airfare, they pay for you to ship stuff there and for your airlines. You're able to go to AMS and they pay for you to present a poster, which plug, I'll be doing that at AMS this year in January. I'll be presenting on the third day of the student conference. You get paid $600 a week for the entire 9 weeks that you're there, which is not anything to like bat an eye at. They had professional development workshops that we did every couple of days where we get on Zoom with the other call and somebody would present or they'd talk about their career. And it was really interesting to see. And most of all, networking is really big because the mentor that you have and the other people that you're there with, you are never going to have a chance to be in that same setting, but they will always remember you and introduce you to other people and be able to refer you that way. So like one of our professional development workshops was like creating our LinkedIn profile and matching with everybody from both REUs. So they teach you a lot about really good networking skills. And so what a day in the life would look like. So it was pretty much like a full-time job during the week. You could work 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever. Or I think it was 8 to 4. We had like an hour lunch break around 12. You can go in when you wanted. It was like granted, like there were certain times that like the mentors were there to answer your questions, but for the most part, like for me, I'm not an early morning person. I went in the beginning of the summer, I was 8:30, 8:45, then 9, then 9:15, and it just gradually got later as the summer went on, but I would stay later as a result. Those professional development workshops I mentioned, those were required, but you were already in the lab, so it was part of the day that you were working. Sometimes they give us special days off, like we had a 3-day weekend for July 4th. We had a 3-day weekend, like my birthday weekend, which was really nice because I got to go out and like do things. You're required to track your progress. So we had 3 progress reports that were due. In the middle of the summer, we had a presentation that we did at like around the 6-week mark, which we did that in collaboration with the other group at Plymouth State, give a presentation on what our research was about. There was group bonding activities. Sometimes we went, I'll talk about that later. And then your weekends were free, but you were highly encouraged to explore the area. And so it's like, oh, explore the area. Yeah. So the very first week we were there, on the right side, like the right-hand side, that's a group photo of all of us. We went to a state park about an hour away from where the town is. Some people had their cars, so we were able to drive. And we all went on a hike. In the middle photo, that's me and my research partner, Grace. And in the background is a girl named Kelly. We all went to Niagara Falls and did the Maid of the Mist tour, which was really awesome. And then on the left-hand side, as you can see, I spent the 4th of July weekend in New York City, which is a short 6-hour Greyhound ride from where we were at in upstate New York. But it was totally worth it. And so there's tons of things you can do. I even took a day off to go to New York. We went on Thursday. We only had Friday off. So my mentor Nick he was like, yeah, no, you should go, that's awesome. Like he was very supportive of it. He thought that he really wanted us to like get out and make like lasting memories and stuff. So they're very encouraging of that. And so, all that being said, did I actually do research? Yes, I did. So I was working with Dr. Nick Metz, who is a professor at Hobart and William Smith. I worked with Grace Van Patter, who was she's from Penn State. She's going to be a rising senior. We also worked with another group from Plymouth State, another pair of two. We were the only group that ended up doing that, but it's because we had a very large project. I worked with Dr. Jason Cordera, Alyssa Griffin. They're both from Plymouth State. And then Matt Freakin, who's also an HWS student. So even though he was in the REU and he got selected, he ended up being paired with Jay, who was at Plymouth State. So even though he went to HWS, he got to spend the summer in New Hampshire. And so we had our research was broken down into two groups. We had our the group project when I worked with Grace and Alyssa and Matt, and an individual portion where I focused the research a little bit more and was able to kind of do what I wanted with it. And so we used a bunch of different programs, which they taught us how to do at the beginning of the summer. The main one that I used was SPSS, which is basically a graphing software. You can use GIS. So if you have prior knowledge, that's really useful. If not, there's a tutorial that you're required to do. We used PowerPoint, Excel, and there was no coding necessary. So I actually asked them if I want to code something so I could loop it so I don't have to do it manually myself, can I do that? And they were like, no. So they try to keep it as simple as possible so it's accessible for everyone. And so the big meat is, what did I actually do? So these are, my project was about elevated mixed layers. We started with creating a climatology. And so what is an elevated mixed layer? It's a special thermodynamic profile where warm, dry air from like mountainous regions in the West is advected over like flat terrain. So you see them a lot in the Great Plains because that's right downstream of where those mountain areas are. They're commonly associated with severe weather. And for that reason, since no climatology exists, there's only case studies where it's like, oh, there was an elevated mixed layer at this specific severe weather event. Since there's no real climatology, we don't know how often they occur in certain areas. Where we our research question was, what does the distribution of elevated mixed layers look like over the contiguous United States? And so these next slides are going to be right off of my 6-week presentation. So credits to me and Grace, I guess. So our climatology, the way that we did it, we used 9 stations from 9 different climatological regions, and we tried to pick a site that would be representative of each station. Obviously, you can see Lincoln is a little bit more west of where the center of the Ohio River Valley area is. So there's obviously a little bit of flaws in the representation, but that's where the radio songs were. So we kind of did what we could. So we used those 9 stations from 1991 to 2020. So it was a 30-year climatology. We used the radiosonde 700 and 500 millibar temps and heights to look at the lapse rate distributions. And most of them were pretty similar, except for kind of west. And so we used those distributions to kind of determine, okay, where's the cutoff of what we want to define as a steep lapse rate? So the lapse rate, for anyone who doesn't know, is the way that parcels cool as they go up in the atmosphere. And so we ended up looking at a bunch of different distributions from a bunch of different stations and decided, okay, the 95th percentile, somewhere around there, is around 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer, give or take a little bit. So that's where we defined it. So it helped us narrow down our data a lot to where we would potentially find elevated mixed layers. We looked at the monthly distribution of the steep lapse rates and the average potential temperature of days that had lapse rates greater than or equal to 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer. And so we used that to define our criteria for finding elevated mixed layers, was that 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer lapse rate. We only used the 12Z soundings, not the 0Z soundings, because we didn't want it to be contaminated by the convection during the day. And we used average potential temperature instead of regular potential temperature because we wanted to average it over the layer, because we found that would be more representative of the entire layer rather than just using the 700 millibar potential temperature. So these are some of the graphs that we did. We broke it, since there was 9 stations, we broke it up. Grace and I did Spokane, Washington, Flagstaff, Arizona, Rapid City, South Dakota, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Lincoln, Illinois. And the other stations Matt and Alyssa did. So I only have access to like what we did, but these are what our graphs look like. As you can see, the distributions monthly were very different for different locations. Like Flagstaff is very clearly, they peaked it in, they peaked in like the summer months, June, July. In Spokane, there's no real trend. It was all over the place. There was a wintertime peak and then there was a late summer peak. So you can see it's very different. And then when you look at average potential temperature, the blue represents average potential temperature for the 700 to 500 millibar layer. That was less than 300 degree Kelvin. So you can see in Lincoln on the left-hand side that there is a notable amount of difference between when the warm and the cool, talking about greater than or less than 300 degrees Kelvin, average potential temperatures. So we kind of did this to try to differentiate between warm season and cool season. High, like steep lapse rate days, because as you can see, like in April, a lot of them were less than 300 degrees Kelvin, which is going to show there's not as much potential for convection. But some places like in Flagstaff didn't really have that. And so how we went about identifying our elevated mixed layers, we have this example sounding from Lincoln, Illinois. We went through around 4,000 SKUTs for the 5 cities I mentioned before. And what we did, if we look at the sounding, the red is the temperature, the blue is the dew point. So right where the inversion is, it has to be steeper than or equal to the isotherms. That's how we define an inversion. And it has to connect directly to the steep lapse rate. We don't want it to be like an inversion and then like dry adiabatic and then like the steep lapse rate. We wanted to make sure it was all connected. And then we had to have a lower relative humidity at the base than at the top to kind of differentiate between the air masses. So these are some pictures of what we were doing as we were trying to identify it. We had a massive spreadsheet that we went through for each city. And you could see like that's Grace on the right-hand side. We took like a piece of paper and we're trying to see if it lined up with the isotherms to see if it was steeper, see if it wasn't. And you can kind of see in the middle picture how it's a little bit jaggedy right here. That's what we were kind of meant, like right here, this wouldn't count as an inversion, but this one right here would be our capping inversion. So because it connects directly to the area of the steep lapse rate. And you can kind of see the bottom left. Not everything that we did worked all the time. We had a lot of trial and error because we tried doing like this one is a graph of the potential temperature as the lapse rate increases, and it doesn't really do much for you. It doesn't tell you much. So if we weren't sure, like this one is pretty clearly an elevated mixed layer, but if we're like, oh, what if this part right here wasn't the same? Like we would check the source region. And so we use the composite 700 to 500 lapse rate map from the physical science laboratory. And as you can see, if we were looking at Lincoln, you can see that they're within the source region right here. That's coming right off of the Rockies. So this one we'd be like, oh, now we know that this is for sure coming from the right source region. So it helps us increase our confidence in being able to identify that this is actually an elevated mixed layer and not something else. And so our results were that, as you can see on the West Coast, like those areas on the west of the Rocky Mountains, had very low percentages of elevated mixed layers for the criteria that we defined. And you can kind of guess that that was going to be the outcome because they don't really have a source region to the west of them to advect anything over. So there's a little bit of mountain in like Washington and Oregon, but you can kind of like that's might be why Spokane's a little bit higher, but like Flagstaff had a 12.5% elevated mixed layer percentage, which is basically like that's kind of what we expected, but you can tell like it was 75% or greater everywhere east of the Rockies. So we knew that our criteria was pretty good for identifying it, but we wanted to make sure we manually went through them all because there were some that did not fit the elevated mixed layer criteria, even if it fit all of the other criteria we looked for in selecting the SKUTs that we looked at. And so the key takeaways from our climatology is that the EML frequency is influenced by the elevation and the location relative to the source region. So east of the Rockies, you're going to have a lot more EMLs than you are going to have west of the Rockies, just because you don't have a source region. And so the other key takeaway was that these criteria worked pretty well for east of the Rockies, but west of the Rockies, we didn't identify very many. And maybe it's because there's not very many, or maybe it's because we weren't looking in the right places. So for my individual research, I kind of looked at this second bullet point to try to identify a way to streamline the EML criteria. So I thought about, is this the best layer to look for EMLs in? And so this is a sounding from Lincoln, and there's very obviously no EMLs in this lower layer or from 700 to 500. But right here around 550, maybe that's something. Who knows? So I decided to look at each station individually and try to break it down to see if there were better identifiers in terms of what layer of the atmosphere we looked at to try to identify these. And so my results, I only got through 2 cities of the 5 that we are working on just because we were running on a time constraint. But the distribution of EMLs, on the left-hand side, the monthly distribution, you can tell what layers were most common in what months. And so overall, 7 to 5 tended to rule, but in certain months, like if you look at July or June, 750 to 550, so a little bit lower than 7 to 5, actually had more elevated mixed layers than 700 to 500 did, as did 800 to 600 and 850 to 650. So maybe looking for steep lapse rates a little bit lower in Lincoln in the summer months might be more indicative of severe weather. And then when you look at the total occurrences on the right-hand side, it kind of shows similar trends, but keeping in mind on the right-hand side, you don't necessarily know that all of these are EMLs. It's just how many times it fit the criteria. So the left-hand side is kind of what we're looking at. And so I also did it for Peachtree City. Looking on the left-hand side, that's kind of the meat of what we were looking for. You can tell very obviously that 700 to 500 millibars is ruling this, but 750 to 550 is not far behind. And so we know that the criteria that we're using right now for steep lapse rates from 700 to 500 millibars is pretty much what we're right on track, because that's what we're looking at right now. So we know that it's a good indicator, and this kind of affirms what we're already doing. And so,
And if you don't mind wrapping it up really quick.
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
No, you're good. So when it came down to it, both Lincoln and Peachtree City had the most events using 700, 500 millibar lapse rates, but there were a lot of events in other layers. And when you look at like a 700 to 500 millibar event versus a 750 to 550 event, like I would say around 90% of the time, they were not the same day. So the number of lapse rate days in different layers was much different. And sometimes they overlap, but for the most part, what was counted as an EML for 750 to 550 was not also double counted in the 700 to 500. So there's obviously, I didn't finish. So there's a lot left to look into. We can look at other layers or break it down into smaller layers than 150 to, or than 200 millibar layers. But yeah, so fast facts. We went through over 5,000 SKUTs manually over the summer. And we wrote 39 pages of research paper. And it was really good because it got me to start thinking about if I wanted to go to grad school, if I wanted to do research, what was I interested in those different areas. And it got me thinking about dynamics. So these are all my references. Everything else is in the slides, and that's what I got.
Thank you, Peyton. And yes, these slides are going to be shared with everyone. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Peyton. Okay, next up we have Tabitha. So I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. Share. Okay.
still have 2 more meetings tonight, and yeah, that's very good. But my internship, so they can see it, my internship was about Middle Tennessee source, and it was a meteorology one compared to my first one that I had my freshman year, which was a journalism one. As many of you probably know me or don't know me, I'm a junior meteorology major in South, obviously, and I'm also a communications major. So a little bit about what is Middle Tennessee source exactly. So we are an online news source, and as you think of broadcasting, a lot of people have actually steered away from watching the television and they're always on the go. So for us, we actually do our online news for 9 of the middle counties in Tennessee, and we're split up into different websites. So there's 9 different websites that I post things on every single day, and it's an easy way for everybody to just gain the news, whether they're at home or away from home and heading back. So what is my job throughout this internship? I have several, not including this internship, also on campus in general. I don't know how I cope with everything, but here we are. So I produce weather updates, and just as we do in VUTV, I do the same thing, only I produce them for the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. So 3 times a day, very busy, always doing things. And as I mentioned, it's similar, but also it's for Tennessee. So here at Valpo, when we're doing our weather updates, I will actually go into the newsroom and record these, as I'm supposed to do after the 2 meetings that I have tonight, but it's probably not going to happen. And I will actually make my own graphics on WSI Max for Middle Tennessee, as I don't have any access to those. And that's the great thing about this internship, is that I have to do everything myself. So there's nothing that's given to me, and whatever I present is all my work. So, you know, they just tell me what they want, and I have to do it in a timely manner, or else I get in trouble. So at Valpo, I do use our green screen and all of our graphics here downstairs in the weather center. Well, in the newsroom, and at home, during COVID times and everything, I couldn't, of course, be here, but I was sent by the company a green screen lighting and a camera and my mics as well. So they provided me with everything, which was really nice of them. I didn't expect them to do that. And I was able to do this internship there, as I'm still doing it now. And this was some of the things that I've done. This was here at Valpo, where I used some of our old graphics and kind of changed them into mine, still continuing to do that. And over on the right is when I was at home. And I absolutely love pets. And I always wanted to put my dog in a weather update, no matter what. So I had to do a 4th of July forecast for the weekend. And I decided, why not put my dog in a cute little hat and bow tie and talk about how fireworks can scare pets. And I was also talking about rain for the fireworks. So that was a very fun thing. A lot of people loved that and talked to me about that. And I also do a lot of journalism stuff on our websites. So I write articles about any sort of weather, whether it's winter, flash flooding, any kind of hail, any national weather, and of course, as I've been doing a lot in the tropics. I've mostly written articles about the tropical weather. It's easier on me throughout the school year to write these articles because I'm very busy, and when you have 17, 18, 19 credits, you don't really have time to do weather updates a lot. So I'm typically, for the most part, just typing my weather updates and saying, this is the high for today, this is what you should expect for this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. And I take my knowledge through all of my journalism skills and I apply it, especially as all of us know, dynamics, towards that paper. But, you know, it gets critiqued and you need criticism. That's what improves your work. So right here, I have a few of my stories. Some of them are very short because a lot of people don't want to spend 15, 20 minutes just trying to read a quick article online about the tropics. And we have a lot of people in Tennessee that absolutely love to go to Florida or down south for the summer, even though they are kind of already in the south. And I think that's warm enough for me, but not for them. So we do a lot of writing, and I will take these pictures and explain what's going on. And I'll kind of educate people, kind of like our dynamics article that we've been doing, but we really have to dumb down information that we know so the public can actually understand it. And this is actually new as of 48 hours ago that I didn't know about, but I threw it in here anyways. So we're starting a weekend radio talk show, and I will have a portion of that starting next Thursday, where I will be talking about the weather for our weekend forecast So this is a new perspective we are taking because we really only talk about, like, we only do articles and videos with people in Tennessee throughout our community, or me doing the weather in Ohio or Indiana, definitely not in Tennessee. I've actually only been there once, so I really had to learn about them before I stepped into this internship. So what we're doing, we're making a talk show for others that prefer to listen to us rather than read from us on the internet, because there are a lot of people, especially our elderly fans, that are like, you know, it's great that you have all these articles, but I don't want to sit here and read it all day. I'd rather sit there and watch you and listen to you all day. And we're like, you know, fair enough. We'll do whatever makes our audience happy. And it's very relaxed and meant for others to get to know us better in the community, as we're very new at this. And we want Middle Tennessee to know us and watch us more than their typical news. So that is Doug. He's the one that is starting this podcast, and we'll be starting that next Thursday. I'm actually working on lots of graphics for that right now, so that's what I've dedicated my time to. But I will be starting off with him throughout the beginning of the podcast, just talking about a little weekend overview of what the forecast is going to be like, especially for specific events that Tennessee has, as there is always a lot going on around there, especially in Nashville. So what has this internship done for me? It provides me with a lot of hands-on experiences. As I mentioned, I make everything myself. So nobody has given me anything. They just tell me, hey, Tabitha, this is what we want. Give it to us within the next 48 hours. Okay. So I do that as fast as possible and I send it right to them. Even if I'm in the middle of doing something, you know, you still have a job while you're here at school and you have to do it, or else, you know, you lose your job. And I will mention that it's a great opportunity for me because I get paid for this. My last internship, I actually had more work, 30 to 40 hours for a week, and it was unpaid. Whereas this is only 10, 20 for me, and I get about $15 an hour, which isn't too bad for the most part. And I'm able to connect with people in other different locations. So I've gotten to connect with lots of meteorologists down south and talk to them and always improve upon my writing with other newspapers down there as well. I learn about other places and get different experiences rather than just a classroom. So it's always great as you're sitting there at your desk learning about meteorology and all the fundamental things of it, but really you get the most out of your experiences within your internships. So I get so many different perspectives and people telling me different things that I may not hear in a classroom. And it's interesting to get this experience for my job as I want to go into broadcasting. Is this broadcasting? Not necessarily, but making the weather updates every single day, 3 times a day, helps me be more comfortable in front of a camera, and also using words off the top of my head, as in it's raining over here and so, instead of just going off a script all the time. Any questions about that? Sorry, I just gave like a really quick TED talk in 5 seconds. All right.
Well, no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, next up we have, sorry, that was really loud. Okay, next up we have Emily McMinn. Yes, right here.
I'm also going to kind of flip through this because I have a physics review at 8. So I'll go ahead and say it here too. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Emily, I'm a senior. Shocker. I worked with the MIT Haystack Observatory over the summer, which is like partially, it's like MIT in name, but it's also like government funded as well too. So the application process, I think Anna's going to send these out later. I did link the website and I did link the application page. The picture on the left are like the projects that I applied for. But basically what I did was, I don't really remember how I found this. It was kind of bookmarked on my laptop from like 3 years ago that I randomly found, and I thought, interesting. So basically I looked through all their potential projects, read through the program details, looked through previous projects, and I thought, hey, why not? Might as well apply. Started the application process, and they, not every RU is this way, but they said rank your top 3 in order of what you would want to work on. And what you needed was a cover letter, a resume, a transcript, a single letter of recommendation, which is kind of abnormal for an REU. And also you get paid, and the stipend changes based off the year-to-year funding because it's an SF funded. I did get paid $6,000 for the whole summer. But what exactly did I do? This was my setup because I worked from home, unfortunately. I was kind of sequestered in the corner of a basement all summer, so I also kind of tried to move around the house some to get new perspectives and things, because it gets boring sometimes sitting at a desk in the same corner every day. Basement smells musty. So unfortunately, I worked from home, but I attended like these weird lectures / seminar hybrid things 3 to 4 times a week. It's usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And they were on, it was usually given by different members of the observatory about what they did at the observatory, the projects they worked on, where they went to school, what their PhD was in, all kinds of stuff. Then I would pester Kevin for coding help because most of my project I did was coding. Again, I coded and did my own research on my own project, which we'll get to later. I read a ton of journal articles. That never goes away. We start doing that in like what, 2016, and it never goes away. Otherwise, I would pester Adam. I pestered Craig a few times. But otherwise, they really encouraged us to have like virtual get-togethers and group chats with the other kids. Because some people were in a group, like an actual group, like the Aerovista team was 3 kids. And they had like daily meetings that they had to do, but mine was a solo project. Some of the other kids had solo projects. So we had a Discord server called Haystack Homies that we still talk in. And then we would do like Pictionary nights. We got a Minecraft server going. I think we still have it up still, I think. I'll have to text comments. But basically, yeah, it was just Discord and Snapchat, Twitter. We all dropped our LinkedIns, things like that. And we would do that like every week, every other week, until we started getting really busy. So these next few slides were taken from my presentation, so I'll briefly go through this. But basically, the Earth's atmosphere is a picture, shocking. I used Fabry-Perot interferometer measurements, which is like this really weird physics instrument that I still don't really understand. And the Millstone Hill Incoherent Scatter Radar. Millstone Hill is the name of the facility that I worked for. The Incoherent Scatter Radar is an actual radar dish, but it's like 1 of 9 in the world, I think. There's 1 in there and 1 in Alaska. Those are the only 2 in the United States. But I investigated the thermospheric zonal and meridional neutral wind response to geomagnetic storms and subaraural polarization streams. Lots of bleh. Zonal, meridional, horizontal, and vertical, not vertical, but X direction and Y direction. And the neutral wind is just like a specific type of wind that exists in the thermosphere. Geomagnetic storms are like shocks basically that occur out in space, and they come back and hit Earth, and then they mess with our electronics. And subaraural polarization streams are just like westward moving plasma clouds that result from geomagnetic storms. Why do we care? It sounds like a bunch of hoo-ha, whatever. The thermospheric winds actually have an important role in the dynamics of the F region ionosphere. You can see the ionosphere. During the day, the F region is into 2 regions, and then it recombines at night. An equatorward, so winds that flow towards the equator actually can blow plasma clouds up the magnetic field lines, and this can lead in some instances to reduced recombination in the F region, but an increase in density, which is abnormal. And this can cause issues with space vehicle reentry, modern technology, pretty much anything that they say, oh, a solar flare, watch out for these kind of effects. But it's just like a sub effect. Here is an example plot that I created of the Fabry-Perot interferometer data. This measures the 630 nanometer night glow emission, which night glow is just the like a faint atmospheric coloring due to oxygen. It's actually, if you Google it, it's got some really awesome pictures with it. That's why we can see stars, basically. 630 nanometers is just a specific wavelength. 250 kilometers is the altitude. We have two different databases that I worked with. The historical database, which got shut down in 2002 because they were like revamping the instruments in the facility. And then the new database from 2009, and it's still currently being added to. I mostly use the new database because the historical had already been used in several journal articles and several studies, and nothing had been done with the new database. So these are the instruments I worked with. The incoherent scatter radar is like the actual radar dish itself. Well, that's the MISA. It's two parts. The ISR is. The MISA antenna is the steerable one, and the Zenith is the one on the right. The top picture, it's like a vertical, like a wind profiler. If you got to see the wind profiler videos. The plot on the bottom is what the MISA data looks like. It's gridded data, but it also goes up in elevation, so we can see all the way into like middle Canada and into the ionosphere basically. And this shows the movement of plasma densities and things like that. So quickly the results. Basically, zonal winds are predominantly eastward after dusk and the westward before the dawn. The strongest eastward winds occurred in the winter. The east to west transition occurred earliest in the summer. Meridional winds are predominantly equatorward in all seasons with large latitudinal gradients. And the big thing that we found was autumn had generally more equatorward winds, but they peak around the same solar local time, which was just about after midnight. And you can read the spring bullet point. But basically, the old database did not have enough data or data coverage to create an accurate climatology, which was what I did. I actually created climatology and seasonal variance. So they had to break everything down into summer, winter, and then the equinoxes, but they couldn't actually differentiate between each equinox because they didn't have enough data coverage. So with the new data set, with the revamped instruments, I could actually go in and do that. So it had never actually been done before, which was really cool. I didn't know until the very end of the summer. Just a summary, the current work is a general agreement with the previous work. And then the spring and autumn had differences that were not negligible, needed further experimental data in. We had more exploration into the spring and autumn, and then we wanted to go back. We ran out of time, but we wanted to go back and connect it with geomagnetic storms and magnetic reconnection. Some pictures. That's my cat. His name is actually Kitty, but Anna calls him Guadalupe. He's really fat, just sits around, stares and meows. He kept me company all summer long because my parents were like, I don't know what you do. To be fair, I didn't know what I was doing either. This is a picture of our Friday check-ins. We had 2 different check-ins a week. Friday was kind of everybody got together and said, hey, I'm really stressed, or hey, I'm doing great. This is what I did this week. This is what I'm looking forward to. And then basically, are you on track or not? And then that's a picture of my Monday check-ins with my mentors. I actually had 3 mentors, but Phil conveniently disappeared halfway through the summer and didn't really come back. He's also the PI on the AeroVista team, which is like they're 2 like satellite things that are going into space soon. So he's the lead on that team. It's funded by NASA. So he was probably pretty busy with that. Otherwise, I had Urcha and Shunrong, and they were really great. I had a really good time. Some extra cool fun facts that I found out this summer. Remember this? Picture of the black hole that got taken? Well, this is Kazu Akiyama. He's an astrophysicist. And that is Vincent Fish. And he's a radio astronomer. And if we go back, I don't know where the laser is on this thing. Lasers. Vincent Fish. So I actually got to work with the guys who worked on getting the picture of the black hole. They weren't my mentors, but Kazu had office hours, and he gave general talks about it. And then Vincent, I talked with him like almost every day, basically. So that was really neat. And they actually made a documentary for it that I linked. It's on Netflix. It's actually really interesting.
watched it with my brother and I was like, hey, I know that guy. Hey, I work with him. That's kind of cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Questions? Thanks, Emmett.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Love
Of
you.
course.
Thank you.
Fourth grade and poor Adam had it.
Cool. All right. Yes. All right. So,
Make it.
all right. So next up we have Natalie Vernon. Woo. Okay. Present. There you go.
I'm gonna stand over on this side because I talk quietly and you can't hear me over Zoom. So, hi, my name's Natalie. This summer, last summer actually, I was part of the Hollings Scholarship Program. I sometimes call it referred to as the Hollings Internship Program because it's basically the same thing. But some background about the Hollings, it's actually called the Ernest F. Hollings Undergraduate Scholarship. And it was named this after, or it was established actually in honor of Senator Ernest Fritz Hollings of South Carolina, because he was a champion and worked a lot towards ocean policy and conservation for his years as a senator. And every year, 120 plus students are selected to receive tuition support and a paid NOAA summer internship. Very fun. How did I find this internship? Where you all are now. Hi. My freshman year, I heard about it through some of the upperclassmen, and also Bart had some of the Hollings scholars come in and talk from other years about those, so that was fun. Usually we've had, Valpo has had a Hollings scholar each year for a long time, so it's very nice, very fun, be part of that legacy. How to apply and the process. There's a website you go to, and you search, Google search Hollings Scholars. The first link has all the information. It's great. That's how I also found it. But what you need to apply is a filled out Hollings application, which is on the website, all of that. One essay, which is very important, actually. I'll get to that in a second, but you want the official transcript and the 2 reference letters. This year's applications are already open, so go and join. But they are due by January 31st, 2022. It's open mainly for sophomores, because you get it, it's mostly for sophomores. But as I was saying, your essay is very important because they don't really go off the GPA, even though it is a deciding factor. Your essay is what draws them in. So you want to do something that's very catchy, very interesting. My essay, I started it out with a stage collapse in Indy for the state fair, because I was a couple miles away going to it when it happened. And that kind of got me on my path for weather. And people were like, yeah, you look like you want to do this a lot. So I was like, yes. And so that, I think, is one of the reasons that set me out from all the people who applied. So you want to make it interesting for people. Once the deadline has passed and you have applied, the Hollings Scholarship team will go through all of the applications, and it'll take a couple of months for them to get back to you. I submitted mine January 31st, and the date we heard back was April 1st. So like, why do you want to email us on April Fool's Day? I don't know if this is a joke or not. It wasn't. Yay. So yeah, I don't think that's 5 years long. What you will do during the internship, there's actually a 2-summer internship. The first summer will be the summer between your sophomore and junior year. And that summer you will go to an symposium, opening symposium, where they explain everything to you, like everything. And then you'll still have no idea what you're doing because it's the government. but yeah, so usually the scholars travel to Silver Springs, Maryland, and they'll pay for all the travel and everything. Didn't get to go because COVID, yay. But then you'll get to tour all the main NOAA facilities, go to a career fair there, meet a whole bunch of people from different NOAA and agencies, and there, of course, the orientation and networking with all of the other scholars is a big important part. And then you'll be free for the rest of the summer, so you can actually have another internship. Yeah. Once the school year, over the next school year, so during the school year, it'll be explained to you if you get it, but you'll be allowed access to a database with internship opportunities. And you'll be able to look out, see all the internship opportunities in NOAA, reach out to mentors, and they can, if they like you, they'll interview you for the internship. But probably most likely we'll have to interview. I had a phone interview and 2 Google Meet interviews. So that was fun. Loved doing it. The week before I had the professional perspectives on how to do an interview. That was fun too. But it was nice. It was fun to meet everybody. And then once you're chosen, you're allowed to go on a site visit and make other arrangements. And they of course pay for the site visit, and it's not COVID. I didn't get to go anywhere. I stayed in my closet in my house for the whole summer. So the second semester, you'll be participating in the internship research opportunity. I spent most of mine, as I said, in the closet in my house, on Google Meet, 8 hours a day for 5 days a week for 10 weeks. So much fun. But you'll be allowed to do a bunch of stuff. Usually if you are like at a National Weather Service, they'll have you out doing stuff with the team, storm surveys, forecasting, everything like that. I got to go to a lot of workshops from the Department of Commerce. Yeah, I was in a bunch of National Hurricane Center calls in the South Carolina office. It was a lot of fun and a lot of networking and all of that. At the end of the summer, of course, you'll be doing your research projects during all of this, so you'll have to complete your research project, and you'll usually present at the closing symposium. Yeah, another symposium. You get to do it a lot. Like I said, it's the government. But I didn't get to present at the closing symposium because we didn't have it because of COVID. So they just had me present to my mentor. My mentor's like, yeah, you did good. You're going to present to the office. And they're like, yeah, you did good. You're going to present to all of the Carolina offices. And I was like, great. I don't like this. So once your internship is done, it's actually done, you'll still get paid for the rest of the year. But you are allowed to present at 2 research conferences, and the NOAA will pay for them. If your abstract gets selected to be presented, then you are fully paid, funded, travel, housing, food, all of that. So yeah, the pay, this is the good stuff. So as I said, you get like tuition help. That's $9,500 each academic year. So that's, you get it for 2 years. And then during the internship, you'll receive $700 each week, plus a housing subsidy of $400 if you live 500 miles away from your home. I didn't get that because we all had to do it at home. It saved a lot of money doing that. I think that's why we got stuck at home. So my experience, I'll just go through it quick. I had like a 12-minute presentation on my research alone. I did not put that in here. It was too long. But I did a lot of spreadsheets. My research project was on the effectiveness of the Warnock forecast system at predicting severe weather, different severe weather in the Carolinas. So I was looking at all of the Carolinas, all of the storm reports from 2009. It wasn't a lot up to 2018, so it did help with that. But I was doing all of that. In the end, I did like 224 spreadsheets approximately. Not all of the projects are like this. This was just what I chose because I like spreadsheets. I don't like them anymore. Of course, I made graphs for everything to make it easier to see. And then there was so much data, it was so small you couldn't see it. That's just for one area in one day, by the way. Here is a picture of the Warnock Forecast website for those who haven't seen it before. It is actually very good. And the results of my survey or my research was, it is very effective at predicting hail and flash flooding and the amount of rain in the Carolinas. Not wind. It is awful at wind. It could use some more, but it's pretty good. And since I spent so much time on spreadsheets, in the end, I made a picture of myself doing spreadsheets in a spreadsheet. That is all spreadsheets, by the way. By the way, you can see my setup. Here's a table. Here's a table in the corner of my room. So much fun.
That is so cool.
And that's it. Any questions?
That is so cool. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah. all of the sophomores will apply. It is a very fun time, even if you are stuck at home with COVID, but that's not what will happen, hopefully.
Sorry, that is so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that. Next up, we have Matt Kavanaugh. Hold on, let me get rid of that. If I can get to his PowerPoint. Hey. And if you want to click it.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. I'm here to talk about my volunteer position with the National Weather Service at the Twin Cities. My name is Matt Kavanaugh, you see on the slide. So hello. If you all do not know me, I am Matt, and I am a senior Met major here at Valpo. After undergrad, I'm looking at, are you okay there?
Yeah, I'm choking on my water.
All right, I hope you're okay. Anyways, so I'm looking at graduate schools next fall in order to obtain a master's degree in agriculture meteorology and environmental systems. And after school, I'm hoping to work in the environmental sector, so hopefully in forestry or some sort of agronomy after the completion of my master's degree. And am I thinking about teaching one day? Possibly, and that is a big yikes. I can't imagine myself doing it, but hey, if it happens, it happens. And there is a picture of me in Big Bear, California, in typical fashion, wearing shorts in the middle of the snow. That's just what I do. So the application and selection process for this position, it varies by office, so I can only speak for mine. I cannot speak for the other NWS offices. But in general, links are posted by the individual offices between January and March. So if you are interested in working in a specific office, I would recommend checking around their pages to see when their links go up, because it can happen very suddenly without notice, knowing the government. Applications are typically due about 2 to 3 weeks after they open. I think mine had about 3 weeks, and I applied within the first week it was open, because again, you don't know when it's going to close. If they have a certain number of applicants, they may shut it down early. So definitely get your foot in the door as early as you can when you see these pop up. The application process is very straightforward and easy for the most part, or typical for what you would expect with other internships. Essentially, it includes an official transcript from the university, a resume, a cover letter, just giving a brief description of yourself and your interests, and then a personal statement regarding what you want to achieve and how you see yourself going further with the National Weather Service or with whatever career you want to choose. And finally, you will need one letter of recommendation in order so that a faculty member can show off what you have to show for. You will hear back fairly quickly. I heard back in about a week. They contacted me and they were like, hey, welcome to the program, and we look forward to working with you soon. And that kind of goes off of the fact that there's no formal interview for these positions, at least not for mine. I'm not sure how other offices work or how it usually works during non-COVID times, but they reached out to us individually. They're like, hey, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and we're going to start working pretty soon. In general, what I have found, I did a little bit of research on this, about 3 to 5 candidates are selected per office per year for those that do the program. We had 3 for ours this summer. It kind of depends on the faculty availability, who's in the office, what people's schedules are on their team of staff members. And typically the position is about 10 to 15 hours a week per week in person, but not this year because of COVID. So everything was at home, virtual, as you will find out on the next slide. So what I did and am doing, we basically did a variety of tasks with the National Weather Service and shadowed various meteorologists in their specialties to learn more about what they did. So first and foremost, in no particular order of importance, we worked with and created graphics for decision support services, which, if you do not know, DSS is the system that provides information and updates for emergency crews and event managers. So the graphics that you see when you go to your home National Weather Service page, they kind of give the detailed weather briefing for that particular region. That's what I worked on a lot over the summer. So I worked with them to create these graphics. We would develop area forecast discussions, AFDs, for the Twin Cities region, as well as write up various watch and warning text for the region if there was a particularly interesting weather event going on for that day. We would participate in daily weather briefings and discussions with the team, which basically, if you don't know it, in the morning, usually it was 9:15 a.m. for our office. All the meteorologists get together and they talk about happenings in the office, a particularly important weather event, forecasting techniques, and all sorts of really interesting stuff, believe it or not. As us as volunteers, we were invited to Zoom in to this meeting every morning that we wanted to and learn more about their operations. Get to learn about all the various climate and hydrologic products. And since we are a National River Forecast Center, get to learn about a lot of the software that they use and learn about how stream flow is measured and how they keep track of high and low flow on various streams in the region. And we also learned about the climate data for various sites. And that was really cool because we got to see how they check and use quality control on the data as it comes in. And that was, I could go into a whole spiel about that, but that would be beyond the scope of this presentation. We also learned about upper air tools and measurement techniques in decent depth. So we already do balloon launches here, but we learned about how the National Weather Service goes through that formal procedure of going through that data and selecting what they are going to put out so that everyone can see and so that the government can use in the models that they create. We've got to shadow several office shifts, morning, afternoon, and evening. For the evening and overnight ones, it was never the whole time because they weren't gonna expect us to sit up with 4 cups of coffee trying to stay up through the entire shift. So we come in for a little bit in late evening hours, maybe just talk to them for a couple hours, shadow some of the most important tasks that they had to do that night, and we would get a sneak peek at what they do. We learned also about the COCRAS, co-op, and other forms of observation. So those are the volunteer programs that send in various data on rain, snow, and severe weather when that does occur. I learned about technology in greater depth, such as radar. So we got to see how that all works. And then what I thought was one of the most cool parts of this, you'll see in the next slide when I talk about good things and bad things about this position. The mock interviews were by far one of my favorite parts of this because they really showed you how to properly interview for a government position and how it really kind of got you in the game for what types of questions you might expect for a real interview. And they basically gave each of us tips on what to do in an interview, what not to do in an interview, and proper conduct and all that. And this is also, if you were interested in pathways positions, this is a direct preparation for that. So if you're an undergrad or even graduating and want to check out a pathways position, this is actually a very great head start because it'll give you direct preparation for entry into those positions. And last but not least, I am beginning a research project this fall with one of the staff meteorologists, Todd Holquist, on urban heat islands and how they influence and how they are impacted by weather. So if anybody is interested, once I have more data collected and we get farther along in this research, I plan on sharing that with you guys because I think we'll have some very interesting findings once this all comes together. So my favorite aspects of this were working with a small team. It was a very small group of us, 3 of us volunteers, plus a team of about 5 staff meteorologists. So we all got to know one another fairly well. Even though we were virtual, we had a really good time connecting online, and that was really cool. So a very personable experience. You got to work at your own pace. We did a lot of modules concerning the different topics that we were covering over the summer. And that provided a very flexible personalized experience, which kind of goes into the fact that we had, excuse me, very flexible hours. And that's very essential when there's people like me working on summer job that requires about 30 to 35 hours per week. You got to build connections with longtime National Weather Service meteorologists. So I made a lot of valuable connections in the office. So in the future, if I'm trying to look for work either in the National Weather Service or outside of it, they have a lot of connections to various people. This is really a great way to improve your job and employment and interviewing skills. You really learn how to properly present yourself in an interview. You do a lot of practice with that, and a very great experience to have no matter where you go, grad school, employment, right after college. You're gonna really benefit from this. And finally, as with most internships, this is a great way to build your resume. You really get some awesome experience and something that I will really cherish going forward. So the downsides, not as bad as it might look. Of course, with most things, since we are in the 2020s, unfortunately, it was virtual. Sadly, could not go into the office, even though I live only about 25 minutes away from it. So we had to learn about all the technology online, and it really just wasn't the same hands-on experience, because when you're learning about meteorology, you really need experience hands-on with the instruments, with the software. We didn't really get to have that. It is unpaid. Unlike Pathways, this is completely unpaid, so it is volunteer, so you really need to have something outside of this if you're looking to make some sort of a living over the summer. And inconsistent day-to-day work, it all kind of depended on when various staff were available. And if a bunch of you may or may not have known, it was very difficult weather up there over the summer up in Minnesota, between drought, heat, forest fires. The staff were busy all the time, so there really wasn't a lot of time to just sit down and have volunteer discussions with us every day, because they were jammed busy. So insights to take out of this, even though this was virtual, I still learned a lot about the software and the operations and just the day-to-day work life of the NWS meteorologists. I learned more than I ever thought I would. And so it's really something great to take forward, because you never know what you're going to get out of something unless you try it. Valuable employment skills, like I touched on earlier. You really learn interpersonal skills, how to interact with people in a meteorological sense, and interviewing skills were covered in great detail. You really feel more confident going into an interview. Many common software packages and programs utilized that you might use in the National Weather Service. And again, this might vary from office to office. And of course, when we're not in a pandemic, everything is a lot better. I would highly recommend this to anyone, even if you are not interested in government, public sector, give it a try. You are going to learn a lot from this. So if you can't get an REU or any other position that you might be interested in, check it out, because you will learn a lot from it, I promise. And a research project is typically a part of this volunteer position, as I am starting right now. Couldn't get to it over the summer because of their technical difficulties and busy weather. So you'll get to do a research project at some point. And of course, research experience is greatly beneficial, especially if you are interested in graduate programs. Hence why the first slide I put in is relevant. So does anybody have any questions on or comments, remarks, whatever you want to say? Go ahead. Thank you. I appreciate it, Emmett.
All right, thank you, Matt. Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Matt. All right. All right, I said there were 6 people, so I am last. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm gonna make a timer for myself. Yeah, I have a lot of pictures. Hello, everyone. My name is Gendusa. I'm a current senior here in the department. I'm not going to stand by the computer because I'm loud. So I interned this summer with AccuWeather for Business in Wichita, Kansas. As you can see, I took a lot of pictures. I have over 400 pictures that I took over the summer. Yes. I'm gonna do a quick backstory on this one. That picture is of a tornado from Hurricane Elsa, which made landfall in Florida. So that's by Jacksonville. I learned a lot about tropical tornadoes, kind of the radar signature, the different features about them. This isn't my tornado warning box, but I was able to warn a tornado about 20 minutes before it touched down. And you could tell it touched down by on correlation coefficient when you have that ball that there's a tornado on the ground. Unfortunately, it did kill one person. That was kind of the day I decided when I got back to my place, I was like, I want to do this and protect people, especially. Outline my presentation. I'm just going to kind of go through background, interview, where to live, pay, what I actually did, and things to do in Wichita, and some advice. So AccuWeather background, it's a private sector meteorology company started by Dr. Joel Myers, a graduate from Penn State University. They have 4 offices in the United States with their global headquarters located in State College, Pennsylvania. And AccuWeather for Business is a little different compared to the AccuWeather that you think, that I know ABC 7 Chicago is powered by AccuWeather, as they say. This is a little different. So they're based in Wichita, so they forecast for clients that are paid for the service. I can still remember certain people's criteria. Lowe's is they want only a tornado warning or high winds within 3 miles of their facility. Every Lowe's in the United States. Alaska obviously doesn't get really that much, so they're still there. And there's some other big name clients, Amazon, Union Pacific, a good chunk of the railroad companies. So yeah, and they want lead time, which is important. So the interview process. So I found out about this internship when I was a freshman, and 2 graduating seniors actually had this internship, which they only select 2. So Valpo dominance at that point. But I was interested in that. And then the following year, one of my friends, Jillian, who's Ford, who graduated in 2020, also had this internship. So I really wanted to be a part of this. So applications released in January. I spoke with one of the managers at the Penn State or State College office, and I talked to him during AMS, the breakout sessions about AccuWeather, what like he took away from it, what he likes working about it. And then I decided to put in my application like a couple of days later. So basic information's needed, resume, cover letter's optional. When they say it's optional, it's required. Do a cover letter because that's how they know a little more about you. I remember getting called by one of the managers, Tyler, when I was walking around campus. So I called him back and I was like, yeah, I can do an interview. I scheduled it February 3rd. I still have a Snapchat selfie that I took before that because I was very excited. And then they gave me a virtual tour around the office. I got to speak with a Valpo alum who also had this internship. He graduated in 2018. So I received an email that I was chosen. This is my acceptance email. And I also had an exit interview before I left, which was very sad. So pay an hour. So the starting pay was $12. It got bumped up to $13. Since they hired some bigger name clients, I don't know if they're actually established yet, but so yeah, I got bumped up $1. It's a 40-hour work week. So the first half of the summer, I had the 11 to 7:30 shift. Then I asked if I could do the overnight shifts because, you know, why not? I want to see what it's like on both the sunset, sunrise kind of thing. And then the last part of my job, I worked 8 a.m. to 4:30. They do offer a 30-minute break, which is why it's 8 a.m. to 4:30. I did not take my break. Instead, I left at 4, I left at 7 because I didn't want to leave and go to the break room. That's the schedule. It's a lot. I only had to worry about 1 row, but I was very interested to see when people would work, so I knew how I was coming in to see. So how they respond to COVID. So they had where if I was vaccinated and it's been 2 weeks, then I could go into the office. If it wasn't 2 weeks, they had me COVID tested, but I was already vaccinated for 2 weeks at that point, so I was good. And I was allowed to go in the office. Masks were not required for those who were fully vaccinated. Most of the people in the office, there's probably like 1 or 2 who weren't vaccinated, and then they had their masks on. So overall, I kind of felt safe. It was like a little bubble. I loved it. I wore my mask, obviously, like outside, like going to the stores and stuff, but I didn't end up wearing it in the office. And We received emails pretty frequently on like safety protocol, kind of updates on how AccuWeather as a whole was responding to the situation, where to live. Unlike REUs or other internship experiences, a place to stay is not included. So that was the one catch. Foxhorn was a common apartment complex that they recommended, and I was told by Jillian about. I stayed at an extended stay hotel. If you've ever seen my car is tiny. It can't fit anything. It fit my suitcase barely, and you know the stuff that I needed. So I stayed in an extended stay. Here are cute pictures I took when it was storming. There were modest clouds on that day. I missed some of them. So I stayed, it was less than like $30 a day. I ended up getting some discounts because I was staying for 70 days there. The people were super sweet there. They called me adorable a couple times. Very nice people there. But I didn't need to worry about purchasing furniture. I bought a toaster oven since there wasn't a stove, but pretty much I was all set. It was kind of like a dorm. And personal preference is obviously where to stay. People in the office are more than happy to let you know where to stay. So what did I do? First half, I worked at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. to 7. So I helped do Canada or Mexico temperature contour maps, which you don't do at Valpo. So I didn't know where to start. So I had help from the meteorologist on exactly where do I go with this. Also the United States temperature maps occasionally. And I even met watch. The difference between this year was that the interns, it was me and another girl from Millersville University. We met watched a lot. So it's kind of what they call, you look at a different area of the United States. A common one was the Southeast for lightning. Yay, Florida. But we did that with a storm warning meteorologist. So we issued various warnings, especially lightning starting out. It was never under our name because we are not degree mets or certified. So we were always under someone else's name. And I did issue a couple tornado warnings. I thought it was cool. I like geeked out. I had to go to the bathroom and like almost screamed. It was exciting. But yeah, this is kind of one of the areas that saw tropical tornadoes. I give a big shout out to people at AccuWeather because I didn't know that there was a difference between warning a tropical tornado and a regular tornado. 6 p.m. So my day ended when I worked at 6 p.m. at 2 in the morning. Woo, I love staying up late. But I observed one of the storm warning meteorologists put together a forecast for the upcoming days, including Canada. I was able to do a forecast and compare with like the new hire as well as storm warning met, so that was pretty cool. I wrote up a summary of the incoming weather hazards for major interstates. So when I was out west, I said, well, I-80, I don't remember if that was in the west, but I-80 is going to experience like scattered storms, this. It was pretty cool. I also drew upcoming weather hazards for certain railways. They call them quirks. So like you do this color, if you know there's supposed to be scattered severe, stuff like that. And I wrote up precipitation forecast for the upcoming day for a client in Wichita, and I reported precipitation to a Canadian client. Strange, but interesting. And then at 8 a.m. So I typically did 2 to 3 temperature contour maps for the United States, and I transferred them to this program called Canvas. I assisted the morning crew, anything they needed. I did temperature swings also occasionally when there was a temperature change 30 degrees or more in 24 hours. I met watch. I worked on our post-mortem project, which I will talk about later. And I occasionally assisted with Canada and Mexico maps if there wasn't a whole lot to do. And these are the string, so those yellow, orange, red blobs, I do those on the computer. Pretty cool. In Canada. This one kind of looks like a dinosaur, and I remember mentioning it looked like a dinosaur. Cool. And here are more maps I did. I kind of saved them all because I like texted my mom, like, this is what I'm doing. But yeah, and this is kind of what the forecast kind of they put out. The red lightning bolts are more severe, and then you have scattered showers, and then the raindrops. There's no raindrops on here, but that's like just drizzle, flash flooding possibly. So I also worked on a post-mortem project, which was the first year that they did this. If you apply at the state college office, you will do this also. So collaborated with the other intern, her name was Catherine, and we put together a presentation of the severe weather event that happened during our internship. So if you guys remember, June 20th to the 21st, Illinois had that outbreak where Naperville had the EF3. That's what we did our project on. So that's kind of the cover of it. And shout out to Kevin for helping me with this vorticity map. And then we presented to the office as well as a couple Mets in the state college office. It kind of felt like weather discussion. You talk about cyclonic vorticity advection, warm air advections, and sounding's cool. Helpful. What to do in Wichita? I get along with the office really well. I'm on their fantasy football team. I'm 3-0 right now, so not to flex, but so bachelorette nights. I went over to this one girl in her boyfriend's apartment. We watched The Bachelorette, loved it. Bowling, we watched movies together. This is a couple of coworkers and I. We went to a drive-in movie to see Black Widow and Cruella. Getting dinner. They also took me out for my birthday, which was really cool. Like a group of us went for my birthday. It was really sweet. I met their pets. I also stayed up a lot until 4 a.m, which isn't good if you work at 8 a.m, but I talked about whatever. Also attractions. I saw a lot. I will show a spreadsheet that I made, partial spreadsheet. There's a zoo, there's an art museum. I remember showing Teresa this exact picture when I emailed her. And then Keeper of the Plains, if you go to Wichita, go see Keeper of the Plains, it's free. And then I went to a bunch of restaurants, even if I was by myself, conquered that fear. Advice, be yourself in the interview. They ask you Met questions. They also ask you questions about yourself. They want to see how well you fit in the office. So like, you don't want someone who's kind of like to themselves, show yourself. I remember asking her when they asked if I had any other questions, I asked who you guys were in for in the Super Bowl. And then we talked about football for a good 5 to 10 minutes. It was great. Classes I highly recommend taking, radar. I audited radar. However, a lot of people ask me, have you taken a radar class? And I said, yes, I audited one. That was such a big help with forecasting or being like, hey, I think lightning's going to be over. It was highly recommended. Severe storms and nowcasting. Very important. Also, that book that is required, I read it a lot over the summer and it was very helpful. Professional perspectives for cover letters, for interviews especially. I know dynamics is required. Sorry, Teresa, it's frustrating at first, but when you get to an internship like this and you're like, whoa, this is why things are happening. Dynamics is very beneficial. Also, you need to be a rising senior. So you need to be in between junior and senior year because they want you to have dynamics. I know why now. Advice I have, explore the town. I didn't think there was a lot in Wichita. I was wrong. There's a lot in Wichita. Get to know those you're working with. I'm gonna be honest, I cried when I left because I got along with everyone really well. Yeah, I still message people from the office every day. It was great. And I treated the office to Krispy Kreme donuts on my last day. And one of the coworkers told me that the letter is still on their fridge. So I got very happy that. And if you're interested in operations, give this internship a look. I learned a lot in the 2.5 months I was there, especially warning out west, how different the storm motion is there, kind of what to look for lightning, for detecting hail of 1 inch or greater on radar. It has been very, very beneficial. Even if you're not sure what you want to do with your degree, I would check it out. Don't limit your options, not to just this internship, but other internships as well. I told myself, if I liked this internship, I would not go to grad school. If I hated this internship, I was going to go to grad school. And I decided probably within the first week or two that I was going to go into operations. I love this internship. As everyone who I've talked to knows, I love this internship. Also, I'm an overachiever, so I made a spreadsheet of the places I wanted to go. As you can see, I didn't get them all because some of the places are closed Monday, Tuesday, and my weekend was Monday, Tuesday. I'm not bitter, but and other meteorologists can provide recommendations. Oops. I took a lot of pictures. This is an email that they sent out. They send out occasionally like long range tropical updates or storm, SPN storm. I don't remember the acronym 24th. And then they also put my birthday, happy birthday wishes. That's cute. And then, yeah, so here are a couple pictures. I took a lot of pictures. And then thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. And with that, that is the conclusion of our internship symposium. Thank you to those online. Thank you guys for coming in person as well. Please take cookies if you haven't already. And these slides will be shared with everyone in the department. So if you ever want to look at a specific internship or kind of just, get a feel for REUs or internships in general, feel free to check these out. Also, reach out to the people. Thanks, Teresa. Reach out to the people if you're interested in a certain opportunity. Yeah, everyone was very excited during their presentations. I loved it. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. I'll stop.